Leela from the band The Venues. When she came on, she was smoking like a cigarette and had a glass of wine. I'm
Yeah.
like, all right, this is the date. I'm like, oh no.
He's the host of the podcast When Words Fail, Music Speaks, and like many people, he has battled depression and other mental health issues, but music has always been the thing he could rely on to get him through it. Please welcome James Cox from When Words Fail, Music Speaks. How
Hey
are you?
guys, how you doing today?
I'm great. I'm great. Excited to have you on, talk a bit about, your podcast and how that started, talk about just music in general, the like intersection between music and mental health.
Yeah.
That's something I've been big on for a while, so I'm excited to have a conversation with you about it.
Thanks. Yeah. Well. Okay. So for warning, I'm not the expert on depression or music. I do have a depression, so I'm telling them my experience with it. I'm not a
Yeah.
doctor, so I don't.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't even play one on TV. So yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, like
And
in anything with mental health, it's very largely personal and different from case to case. There's not
right.
necessarily one large like overlying solution or anything.
Exactly. Yeah.
So just the first question I had for you is like you moved around a lot as a kid. Did you find that music sort of helped you at all with the moves, or like did it provide, like something to return to, or like a safe space for you?
Well, growing up, my mom and dad used to play all country music, Motown, classic rock and roll. Not They didn't play so much heavy metal because yeah, my parents, they're old school people.
Yeah.
So the heaviest my dad got was Creedence Clearwater Revival, and that's some good old classic rock right there. But as far as moving is concerned, I moved a lot. I lived in the Philippines. I came back to the States, moved to Florida, Virginia, back to Florida, back to Virginia, and they resided in Sumter is where they are now. But growing up, I really didn't have I didn't really I wasn't depressed as a child. So to answer your question, no.
Mhm.
Music came for me, it helped me later on in life.
So I
Uh,
guess that's another question. How did you sort of find a love for music or start really like getting into music?
uh, I think about 16 is when I found Metallica. Metallica's great, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, because my mom, I blame it all on my mom because my mom bought me the first Metallica album on cassette. I'm not sure if you've seen cassettes, but
Yeah. Yeah.
they're old school, things, knickknacks. And she bought me the Black Album. So it's all her fault that I really love Metallica and like heavy metal music.
Yeah.
Um, but I I I forgot your question again. What was the question?
Yeah, just like how did you, find music for yourself? How
Oh,
did you discover your own love for it?
yeah. So I think my parents brought me up onto music in their own way because and as a child I went to Busch Gardens. It's like a Frankie's Fun Park or something really huge.
Yeah.
Um and they used to have concerts there, and I remember seeing the Judds and all these old country acts, you know, and yeah, I don't really remember the first time I heard the music. I just knew that I was brought up on music, and that's where I got my love from.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And just like trying to, learn more about you before having on, I read that you like have lots of work experience in like different jobs as well as like doing
yeah.
more creative work of your own with like podcasts. What differences do you find in like being an employee at like a company or something versus doing something creative like on your own?
Great question, man. Great question, because I have a real problem with this. So, So, as you get older, how old are you, first of all?
I'm 18.
Okay, so you got a lot of years to go before you.
Yeah.
Um, as you grow older, I will tell you to, well, I will tell you that working for somebody is a lot harder and demanding than working for yourself. Um, as you know, I don't know if you have a job yet, but it's very demanding that you work for somebody else because they expect
Yeah.
a lot more out of you than what you think you can do. Now I always um tenfold it up. You know, I always give them um me and then some more of what I can do. That's
Yeah.
just me, you know. And I think the reason why I've lasted so long in each job was I went beyond and above that for my managers. I worked at Central Carolina Technical College for 10 years. I don't think I would be working there 10 years if I just did, you know, whatever I wanted to, you know.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
honestly. And then I worked at a computer store, repairing computers for a while. That was a temporary job. And then after that, I worked at a library for another 4 months. And then prior to the job, I told him that I was moving to Lexington, South Carolina. And he said that's fine, you know, because he needed somebody temporary anyway, so that worked out perfectly.
Yeah.
And yeah, so when I moved up here in 2017, I started working for a thrift store company through the Arc of the Midlands. And the Arc of the I have cerebral palsy, and so what the Arc of the Midlands does or do is they'll help people with disabilities get out and find jobs and live on their own. So they found me a job working at Dave& and Buster's. I worked there for another 4 years, and now I am working at Outback, and I just passed my second year there. So I've been working and grinding, you know.
Yeah.
But but it's a whole lot easier working for yourself because you get to make your own choices and who to invite on as a game. And I'm sure you know,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You have like most of the say. You have uh near like either complete control or near complete control, and
yeah,
it's just a much more like
it's a whole
freeing
lot
and
easier.
like calm experience. So that way like it doesn't seem as much as like pointless orders from a boss. Like you know what the plan is, you know why you're doing everything.
Yeah.
Um, and so yeah, I think it's just a bit sort of see the purpose more in your work, doing something for yourself than for someone else.
Now I will say this. You and I know this, but a lot of people don't, and I want to make aware that starting the podcast sounds great to the ear. You know, hey, I can make my own rules and do everything. Yeah, you can, but there are times when it's going to be a lot harder than what you think it is. You know,
Yeah,
I'm
definitely.
sure.
I've found for myself.
Yeah, because for me, I started this podcast 2 years ago, so we're coming up on the third year this February, and sometimes there's more of a I don't want to say technical problem getting the guests, but it's a challenge
Yeah,
getting
it's like when I first had the idea for this, I was like, great, well, I'll just start it, start reaching out to people, and eventually people will come on. And then I don't think I fully grasped like the full ratio of just how many people you have to reach out to or how many no's you're gonna get before you get someone who's like willing to come on.
right,
And
right.
so trying to find ways to maximize your chances of getting a guest. Trying to find anything that can help you find guests or give you good recommendations for guests. That really helps as well.
Well, I unfortunately lucked out because my podcast is built on around music,
Yeah.
and I've known the first guest we ever had on was a guy named Philip Rowe, and he has been my longtime high school friend. So I lucked out. So it was sort of easy. but then it got harder for me because the more you reach out to PRs, public relations,
Yeah.
females and males, to artists or what have you, they expect you to have good numbers. And what I mean by good numbers in podcast world is listens. Obviously they're not gonna let I mean, David Lee Roth come on your show if you have like below 7,000, because they expect a lot from you to get started with your podcast, so it takes time to build that up. It's a lot
Yeah, you
to
got to
build.
build up because a lot of people have expectations, or like for me, starting this at a young age, guests who are like, yeah, I'd be willing to come on, but like we like need compensation, or like we have a price of this range, and like maybe in the future I can afford that and all that, but still being young, like I can't afford $500 for a guest to come on, no matter their stature or how much I'd like for them to come on. So
Well, the thing with podcasting is the podcast world is kind of unique and different as I feel, because technically no one should be asking for money just to talk with you for like 45 minutes.
yeah, because that's
Absolutely no one. And if they do, that's a big red flag. Because I mean, how hard is it for me to talk to you? It's not hard at all.
yeah, and that's like another thing that I think really is cleared up for you once you actually get into the podcast game, or like have a podcast. Because I've talked to people in my life who are like, how be maybe like they know that I do this, and so they're like, well, how do you go about like prepping an interview for these people, or like what's it like to interview these people? And I'm like, I mean, yes, I'm asking them questions about like their career, about their music, but the core of what it is, and the reason I've structured my own podcast like this, is because while I do record, edit, yes, it's put out for people to listen to, but
Yeah.
like at the base, like what's needed to get a podcast is just a conversation. And
Right.
so it's
Yeah.
pretty easy to, it's basically like saying to someone, can you sit down with a person and just talk to them? Like, depending on your podcast, doesn't even have to be a certain topic. Just talk to them about something
Yeah.
for an amount of time. Not every podcast has to be an hour plus. I'm not saying you should put out like 10-minute podcast episodes, but just have a normal flowing conversation with someone, and that in some form it could be a podcast.
Right. The way how I outline the way. Okay, so the way my works is I'm probably giving away my secret, but I don't care because because I want everybody to succeed, right? So what I do with my podcast is I research the guest or the artist, and I come up with at least 10 questions.
Mm-hmm.
So okay, so my last guest I had it's a band called Brittany and the Blistons. I've only had 5 questions, but the conversation lasted like about an hour.
Yeah.
You,
Yeah.
you never know what somebody might bring up during the talk. If you're like, oh, okay, well this will let me ask him this and her. It's all good.
Yeah, I think, that's very similar to what I do, because like it's not a secret. Like I'm ready to tell it. If you listen to 2 or 3 of my episodes, you'll realize this. The way I do it is I have a set list of just like basic general questions that I could ask anyone.
Yeah.
When I bring someone on, I'll talk to them. If they bring up anything interesting, I'll try to expand on that, learn more about that. And
Right.
I use these questions when like maybe I'll use one of these questions. They'll bring up like an album they worked on, and I'm like, great, that album. Let's talk about that. Go into
Yeah.
that. Let's talk about this song, and then once that conversation wraps up, it goes back to like the basic questions. So it's not like I'm cutting off other things to stay to my preset questions. You want to open it to be more freeform, and in a sense, it's almost better if you can have less like preset questions and more in the moment questions.
Right. Right. Okay. So I'm not sure if you met anybody that you got nervous to talk to, but but uh, you've heard of the band called Megadeth, right?
Yeah.
Megadeth, one of the hugest bands alive, right? So I got to interview David Ellison, which was the bassist for Megadeth, and I was really really nervous. And I told my friend that I was really really nervous, and she said, There's no reason for you to be. They're just human like you and me." I'm like, okay, well, now I got that in perspective. I can just relax and have, and it was great, you know.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
one terrifying thing though during the episode was I thought we were going to go for an hour talk, but he only was eligible for 30 minutes.
Oh
So
yeah.
I had to cut the whole list down to like half of it, but it was great.
Yeah. Yeah. That's still awesome that you got the chance to talk to someone like that. And no matter what level you're at with this, there are still gonna be things that like not necessarily go wrong, but like plans will change and you'll have to adapt for that. Even like a podcast I listen to, it's very big. They're getting like great guests on consistently, and they have a pretty big like fan base, listener base. But they had a guest on, and after like 45 minutes or so, the main host was like, "Yeah, thank you so much for coming on. It's been great." They high fived, and he left. And then it like there was a cut, and it was just like the main host there. I think there were three of them, and they were like, "So I don't know what happened because we had him for an hour and a half, and we used him for 45 minutes." And I don't know what took over me, but I just said like, "Thank you
Yeah.
so much. It's been great." And they just like talked on their own for the next like half hour. And I was like, yeah, like things will happen. And it's not like you have to get down or like think that it ruined it, because you're still gonna have a new product, or hopefully a great product, even if you
Right.
change plans.
Yeah, he might have ran out of questions or something, or like
Yeah, yeah,
couldn't couldn't think of any more questions. I had a similar thing like that before. I forget the band's name. But sometimes I slip up and say, give me a minute," and then I was thinking about, okay, what other questions to ask her, and okay, yeah, well, how do
yeah,
and then I come up with something, yeah, but yeah, he might have got nervous or something, or didn't have
yeah.
any,
And
and it's totally fine.
yeah, and it's great to hear that you still like have to, you still have small moments like that, because you've done this for so long and you have so much experience with it, but you're still like, you still have tips you can use to help you with that. Because like even looking into you, like you have, I mean, tons of episodes of your current podcast, but like I even found out that you did a couple podcasts like before this, and so you
I,
definitely have plenty of podcast experience. But like, so some of those podcasts before your current one, what were those podcasts like? What were they about? And like, did those in any way like shape the podcast you have now?
Great question. I've had 8 podcast channels before this one. I'm not sure. But it was James versus Life, James versus Cerebral Palsy, Secondhand Banter, uh, Communication is Lost. I think that's one of the ones that we were going to do that with. I did that one with my co-host now. But that was going to be a podcast on how we don't actually talk anymore.
Yeah,
We're on our phones and we never think about the other person's self worth. And so that didn't take off because we ran out of ideas.
yeah,
So all of that led up to this one. And I reached out to my friend Blake Mosley again, and I'm like, "Hey man, you know a lot about music. I do too. Let's get together and make some magic." And so we did it, and 222 or 3 episodes later, here we
yeah,
are.
yeah, yeah. And now that you like have that podcast, I mean, for anyone who doesn't know, just let them know what's that podcast about. What do you do on it? Is there any like sort of I know you have like a couple segments or like games, I guess, on there that you do. Can you just tell us a bit about that and like what an episode of your podcast looks like?
Sure. Okay. So, when Words Film Music Speaks is the podcast name. You can check it out on all platforms, including Apple Podcasts. That's our main goal is to get it. I mean, because most people have iPhones instead of Android, and we are on Spotify, but that's not really taking off for us. But yeah. So what essentially is we talk about how music helps with depression and anxiety. Everybody has that now. Mostly everybody. I'm sorry, mostly everybody, not everybody. Um, we find that music heals and deters music depression in such a way that we can't explain. You know, I mean, music is going to be always there for you, morning, noon, and night. It doesn't talk back to you. It talks. It talks for you. Okay. So what happens on the podcast is we have a few series, is what we call them. We have our main series, which is every Monday or Tuesday. We upload one, and that show is based on we take a band, a song, or an episode or a genre, and we discuss what that looks like. If we take a band, we cover his whole catalog, you know, where he got the name and everything about him. Same thing with the genres. Uh, and our other series is called Cover Wars. Now that's probably the one you listen to the most, right? Cover Wars.
Yeah, that's sort of the one that I've heard the most about and like seems very like a fun, like friendly, competitive atmosphere.
Yes. Okay. So that's taking off like a rocket ship, man. It's so great. My friend said, how about you take two covers, compare them, and talk about them? I'm like, I could do that, you know. So my first cover was just me talking about the song "Chop Suey" from System of a Down.
Yeah.
And I covered that from I think I compared August Burns Red to Necro Goblikon's versions, and Necro Goblikon won because because it just to me it just sounded better,
Yeah.
or organically. And I'm like, this is really taking off. Why don't I do this with musicians? Holy crap, So,
Yeah.
so what I do now is invite back artists that I've had on the show before. I've interviewed, and so what I do with them is what I do is I ask them their favorite song ever, and then I go out and find that song with two covers that other artists covered that one song for. I have them back on the show. We listen to them live, and we discuss which one we like more, worse, or equally, and that is so much fun. You know.
Yeah, sounds
So
like a lot of fun. And yeah, that's awesome and seems like a great idea. It clearly has been working for you.
the thing about that series is anybody can come on. You can come on, your mom, your dad, anybody and everybody. So I welcome everybody to come on the show.
Yeah, and that's a great like structure to a show if anyone can come on without needing expertise. I think that's automatically something that works or something that's good. And I mean, like me personally, yeah, I'd love to come on if you'd have me.
Sure.
That seems like a great time that I'd be down to do. Um, you talked a bit about like music being there to like speak for you or discuss uh discuss and help like mental health struggles. Is there any particular like song, artist, album, anything that you have in mind that like you can tell really like uses depression, for example, or any mental health struggle like well in music, or maybe like um makes a song that like touches on those topics really well?
You mean if music can surpass depression?
Not necessarily surprise, like if an artist makes a song about like let's use depression. An artist makes a song about depression and like on top of a positive message or like really being able to help people with depression. It's just a good song or sounds good. Do you have anything like that in mind?
So the songs, I think I know what you're saying. I hope to God I'm getting it right. So the songs like songs that get me out of depression.
Yeah, yeah, I think that'd be a good way of putting it.
Okay, okay. I just want to clarify it just so I can answer you better. Um, yes. Are you a fan of country music?
Not really, not a big fan of country music. I've heard a couple songs and I've recently started like warming up to him, but I still don't listen to it too often.
Okay. Okay. So what's your favorite genre?
Favorite genre, I would say probably like alternative or rock.
Great, great. Okay. Okay, so I got a few of them for you. If you're talking about country, my go-to songs is always gonna be Eric Church. You may want to look him up. He's great. I'm sure your mom and dad have heard of him. Um, two songs that come to mind is Talladega and Round Here. Those are great songs for anybody to get over or to help with depression. Um, and something about those songs is I can't tell you how it makes me feel.
Yeah,
Some songs are like that. And that's okay not to tell people how it makes you feel because it's so deep in your soul, you can't express it.
yeah,
So, rock and metal, I'm right there with you. That's my second favorite genre of all time. Um, a good one is Creed. If you listen to Creed, you should. If you haven't heard of Creed or don't listen to Creed, what's wrong with you? They're great. You know, everybody doesn't like them. I think because they were told to by the media or haters. They're just like Nickelback.
yeah,
Nickelback and Creed gets all the hate, and I don't know why. But Creed does something to me to make my depression um vanquish, I guess we would say.
yeah,
Um, Another great band is called Soundgarden. And Are You a Slave? Chris Cornell. You can't go wrong with that voice.
yeah,
So it's a song here, a song there that makes it go away. I don't really have one particular song. Uh,
yeah.
if
And
you if that song is not working the way you thought it would with your depression, you could go to another one.
yeah, yeah. Again, like it's different songs for different people. Like, and there's not one song that's gonna help everybody. But
Right.
like, yeah, I guess that's awesome that you found something like that because there are, you know, songs I can play where like I haven't been diagnosed, but like I've a few years ago like moved across the country and like had no, I guess, familiarity, like nothing around me. And it felt like I started listening to this album um that really just like a lot of the songs felt like it was expressing the exact situation I was in. And so like even to this day, that's one of my favorite albums. I come back to it all the time. And like no matter what I'm feeling, I end up feeling much better if I listen to that.
Absolutely, yeah. And that's the way music is.
Yeah.
Like I
And
said, like I said, it speaks for you. You know.
yeah. And so do you, I guess like for any reason, do you have just like a favorite album of all time that you like to listen to or like that you
Yes,
go
I,
back
w- I was just listening to it before I came on the show. Are you a big fan of the Misfits?
to?
Have you heard
Not
of
too
the
big of a
Misfits?
fan, but I've heard their stuff.
Okay, so after this podcast ends, go and listen to their album called American Psycho.
Okay.
It's an unskippable album. There's no song that's bad on there,
All
and
right.
that's very rare because I only know two albums like that. It's
Yeah.
American Psycho by Misfits and the album Purple by Stone Temple Pilots. I switch on to either one. Um,
Yeah.
Stone Temple Pilots has a good track record. And I haven't listened to them since their third album. But Core and Purple, Supreme albums. You can't go wrong with either one of them.
All right. Well, yeah, I'll definitely check those out. And I guess like just sort of the last question I really have for you is like on your podcast, like you mentioned, you have 220 episodes or whatever it is, and all this, like so much content and so much time. Is there any like favorite moment or episode that you've had on your podcast?
Hmm. I can think of two. One serious and one kind of funny. Okay, so
Mm,
I'm gonna do the serious thing first because I don't think it's talked about in so many ways, but it should be.
yeah,
I interviewed Bill Protzman, Prottzeman, I think. He's a pianist, and me and him really clicked when we first started talking. I met so many musicians where we just fit,
yeah,
together, and we talked about suicide and how thinking about it and doing it is not the same thing.
yeah,
And he had a story that really moved me. He actually was thinking about it until he heard a classical song, and he just snapped right out of it. Nope, nope. Life is beautiful right now, man. And we just got so involved in our conversation. I think it lasted like about like an hour and a half. We just clicked from that very get go.
yeah.
And the funny one is Leela from the band The Venues. That's another band you should look up, man.
Uh,
They're a German metal band. Um, Leela is a replacement singer for the first singer, and we did a cover wars, and then I invited her on, and she wanted to do cover wars of "Sweet Emotion" by Aerosmith. And then it's funny because when she came on, she was smoking like a cigarette and had a glass of wine. I'm
yeah,
like, all right, this is the date. I'm like, oh no. Yeah, so
yeah,
that's on YouTube. So y'all can see that on YouTube. So I thought that was very cool.
yeah,
There's there's moments of the podcast where I really admire, and I can't think of anything besides those two right now off the cuff. But
yeah,
but yeah, there's there. I mean, because my favorite band, one of them is Demon Hunter. I interviewed Yogi Watts from them. They're a drummer. I mean, yeah, yeah. So there's many
yeah.
many moments, and I can't pick one or two.
Yeah, well, no need to, already like pinpoint one
Right.
definitive favorite. So I mean, it's great that you even came up with those. And just like one last thing I wanted to touch on there, going back to that serious moment you had, like I think it's a really important conversation because even I myself just like pretty recently heard a conversation basically describing the difference between like as interchangeable as it sounds, the conversation was basically saying like there's a big difference between thoughts about suicide and suicide ideation or
Right.
idealization, something like that. It's like if you have like thought about that but quickly, like you said, snapped out of, been like, nope, I'm not actually gonna do that, but I've thought about it, that's more common, or I don't want to really say okay, but that's more common and more accepted than someone really like continuing to think about it, or I mean, like hopefully not, but even like planning something and really having that debate about whether or not to do it. It's two totally different things, and just like two very different levels. And just because like you shouldn't have to worry or feel like you need desperate help if you just have the thought cross your mind, that's okay. But if it's something constant, like please get help, please talk to someone, because you don't have to do that, and it may be something that like you ultimately regret.
Right. Exactly. You
Yeah,
you just said it, man. There's always some kind of help in the form of therapy or music. Um, Try everything you can. Um, First, I guess.
yeah,
Also, I mean, yeah, yeah. You could always call the suicide hotline,
Yeah,
or actually, you know what? I we are we're partnered with BetterHelp, .com,
yeah,
and they are a website where they're a therapy website where they'll find you a therapist, and you can talk to them on the internet, over the phone, text, or call them.
yeah,
And but if you include the words "music speaks" on one word, get 10% off. Yes.
yeah, yeah.
Oh,
Well,
oh,
I mean, I haven't used it myself, but I've
wait,
used mental health or not mental health, better health, and it's like it definitely seems like a great service, something that's definitely helpful for a lot of people. So yeah, I mean, even though like I haven't personally used it, I definitely recommend it from what I've heard and what I know. So yeah, go
yeah.
use BetterHelp with Music Speaks for 10% off.
Yes, sir. Yep. Oh, yeah. Because we're trying our best to get out there and get our name known, and reach out to people who need help. And music is the way to go. Get
Yeah,
rid of all those bad feelings we have.
yeah. Well, I mean, that's, I think, a great and beautiful way to wrap it up. So thank you so much for coming on and having this conversation with me. Um, I feel like, yeah, we talked about a lot of great stuff and a lot of things that hopefully are helpful to a lot of people.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah,
So all you have to do is just go to whenwordsfailmusicspeaks.com to get everything. You can get our contact information. On our very front page, you can listen to all of our podcast episodes. I mean, it's super easy.
yeah, yeah. And I'll leave a link to that down below. So
Okay. Yes,
thanks
sir.
again so much for coming on.
Sure.
And I mean, we'll have to see, but maybe, yeah, I'll come on for an episode
Yes,
of
please come
Coverboard.
on an episode. We would love to have you. Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Sure.